Hello, everybody. This is Mariana, your eTwinning moderator, and I'm very happy to welcome you all for the seventh uh, eTwinning Inclusive Education Group webinar. This time with great experts and one of my online colleagues, Naomi Ganin-Epstein. I hope I have pronounced the name correctly. She has specialized in teaching English as a foreign language to deaf and hard of hearing students for the past 31 years. But her passion are games also, and everyone knows that games can be a valuable teaching tool, particularly when working with struggling learners. However, many teachers find it difficult to play games when there is only one child present. Naomi has a BA in Deaf Education and a BEd in EFL, and she's also a curriculum developer. She is the author of two textbooks for deaf and hard of hearing students, and she's both a teacher and a teacher counselor. She blogs at Visualizing Ideas and lives in Israel. I am not quite sure whether I could pronounce the town properly, but I will give the pleasure to Naomi to say more about herself and actually to introduce herself even better. Thank you so much, Naomi, for joining us. The mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for this warm welcome, and I'm very pleased to be here. And I'm very pleased to be in touch with teachers that care about inclusive education. We all have to recognize that in our classes we don't have just children that are model students. We have children with all kinds of needs, and we have to look out for all of them. And this is our job, and let's have some fun while we're doing it. So I'd like to introduce myself and get on to our topic. You all made the effort to come tonight, and I hope you'll come away with useful tips. And I'd be glad to be in touch with you through my blog later on. So let's proceed. First of all, the funny person with 3 degrees, but none of them is a PhD. I started by doing my first degree, my BA in education of the deaf and the hearing impaired. I like to joke that I got to it because I share the same birthday as Helen Keller, but that I think I discovered afterwards. And then I went, because I was born in the United States and English was my strong suit, I went on to do another first degree in teaching EFL. And I combined them both in my MA as in curriculum development. And if you see, my mentor is Miss Frizzle. For those of you that don't know, it's well worth checking out the Magic School Bus series. It's an American series with a dream teacher who makes everything come alive and real for her students so that they can learn in an exciting way. And she's a bit unconventional, so that's someone I try to emulate. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about games for a minute in general. They don't need much introduction. We all know that games can be useful. Not only every teacher knows that, every parent knows that they play with their children. But let's think a moment about the struggling learner. Who is the child that would be sent to you to sit in one-on-one, sit in a private lesson in school, in some corner, or hopefully in a nice room where you have some quiet? These are struggling learners. They're frustrated. They can be scared. They've had repeated disappointments. Games, had a lot of fun playing with the letter R here instead of reading arithmetic and writing. Games, of course, help the student relax, make the lesson less intimidating. Rejoice. It can be fun. It's something the teacher and the student can share and laugh about together. And with games, you can repeat things again and again. You can review and repeat to help the student remember and recall many times without boring the students to death. Because as we know, many special needs children need more practice to learn things that other children may remember easily. And I'd like to point out in the bottom corner the word respect. Games also teach behavior. How we respect, we wait for another person's turn, we let him finish, and then the next person, she has to play, and then maybe it'll be our turn, and we shouldn't laugh at someone if he made a mistake, which is something I'm about to discuss soon. Games give you a chance for behavioral, how to behave in a group. Some of these children don't always know how to behave in a group later on, and this is good practice. So these are all good things that we all know about games. It's true, I was a little playing fun. I had some fun here that review and repeat is kind of similar, and remember and recall. If you can think of more words, more advantages of games that begin with R, I'd be happy if you add them in the chat box. I really thought this is a nice handle to introduce the subject. Now, on the other hand, you have to be careful with games. See, I took the same slide. But what can happen with a game if you don't think about it? You may think, oh, if I'm a serious teacher, I need to learn how to plan my lessons, how to explain the present simple. But again, you just play it. Everybody's played games since they've been children. Every parent has played games with their own children. But games can be dangerous. Where we say relax, it can be too competitive, and our special need child may feel threatened. And what will happen if he doesn't know the right answer? Will she feel ashamed? Instead of rejoicing, she can be miserable. She can feel ashamed. Again, memory. If a game isn't played correctly, the child can feel threatened. I can't remember anything. I don't want to play a game. In any case, I have no memory. We come across these kids that say terrible things about themselves. I have no memory. I have no ability to remember. I can't recall anything. And if not played correctly, the game doesn't teach respect. It makes the kids get worked up. There's been cases, how did I learn this lesson? My very, very first year of teaching. I started teaching when I was very young. I was 23. And I started teaching a quite difficult class. And of course, I brought in games. And a child threw a chair. They get very worked up. You have to think about how you play games. Now, what we've been saying till now is general things about games, and all in groups, in classes, in anything. Even with your own children, you want the right atmosphere when you're playing games. This is true in general. But games, we always think of them as competition. Let's divide the class into two groups or teams, or we have kids coming one against the other. What do we do when we're only one teacher and one student and we want to play a game? Now think of the problematic situation. On one hand, the teacher is not the student's peer. Like you see here, the birds on the left, they're not on equal footing like these birds. The teacher knows the answer. The student knows the teacher knows the answer. The student expects the teacher to know the answers to the question. If teachers want to play a game and pretend, okay, during the game I'm going to pretend that I don't know the answer so that sometimes the student will win, most kids will not buy that. The students, even struggling learners, it does not mean they are fools. And they want a teacher they can respect, a teacher that they know. And it doesn't make sense that the teacher would pretend not to know the answer. So that doesn't work. Now, we also don't want, like the top picture on the right, we don't want a teacher that intimidates the child and the child doesn't want to play with the teacher. I can't play with you. You know all the answers. I don't know English very well. How can I play with you? And if you look at the bottom picture, we also don't want a teacher that coddles the student too much and says every round, "Oh, it doesn't matter. You made a mistake. I helped you. Well, of course you'll win. You'll always win. Here. I'll give you the answer. I'll tell you the answer." And here's a sweetheart, cutie, darling, and giving the student no challenge, no room to develop, no motivation to go and review whatever it is we're practicing so that they can do better at the game. We don't want the teacher to overdo it on the sweetness factor. Sometimes while my message is please be warm and helpful and considerate and professional when working with struggling learners, we don't want to treat them like in a condescending manner, and we want to teach them, not just say coddle them and you're a poor thing. So we have a situation here that we need to think about how to play with the student and stay away from these three dangers. Okay. So let's take one game for an example. There are many games, and we'll talk about all kinds of things and mention. But if you understand the possible principles with one certain game, then you can apply it to any game you decide and any game that speaks to you. Because like in any teaching situation, if you bring in games that you like, that you find fun, your excitement infects the students, and it's catching. But I like, as an example, to bring a game from America. Many kids find things from America fascinating. And baseball is a game not played that much around the world. Well, I don't know where you live, but in Israel, they play it occasionally in a sports lesson, but it's not that common. Everyone here loves soccer, or football as it's called here. So anyway, baseball. I made a simple baseball diamond on a cardboard, and I cut a picture out of a newspaper of some player. This is from many years ago. I don't even know who it is. And as you see, there are 4 stations. Now, the basic rules of the game, let's see. Basic rules. What do you need to play this game? Now you can play this on the whiteboard. You don't have to have it on a board, but when you're playing one-on-one, it's better to have it on the table and you're sitting around the table, in my experience. But if you have a whiteboard and you want to play it on the spur of the moment, it works equally as well there too. You just need an eraser. So what do you need? You need to draw the baseball diamond on it with the 4 stations. Instead of a ball, we have a dice. One die, it's called. And you need markers. One for you and one for the student. A different colored marker, any shape, whatever you have, whatever is going, doesn't matter. Now here's the thing about the die though. The die should only have a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Take a little sticker and cover the 5 and cover the 6 and add an extra 3 and an extra 4 or whatever number you want on the other 2 sides. Because in baseball we have 4 stations, and to the maximum you can go in one turn is the 4 stations, a home run all around the field. So we don't want the option of throwing any more than 4. So first of all, the original rules, if you were playing in a group before we adapted to one-on-one, a player rolls a die, and then he has to answer questions, or she has to answer a question. Now, what question would that be? Whatever it is you're teaching. Let's start with the youngest kids in elementary. Let's say we're working on capital letters and lowercase letters. If I throw 3, then Marihana is the teacher, so she would write, let's say, capital A, a lowercase b, and a capital C. And I would have to write the matching in the corresponding letter. If I did all three of them right, I move my marker from the first to the second to the third. If I did, well, what happens if I didn't do them all right, we'll get to in a minute. But that's the basic idea. You move your marker from base to base, and every time you get the home base, remember the baseball diamond? Go back a minute to the baseball diamond. The home base is right here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see my marker. At the very bottom, that's the home base. Every time one of the players passes the home base, you get a point. And the player with the most points wins. Now this game doesn't have an ending. It's a circular game. So you play it for a set amount of time until the bell rings, or for the last 10 minutes of the lesson, or for a certain amount of time, because it doesn't really have an ending. Now, how do we play it one-on-one with all the limitations we spoke about? Remember, the student knows, the teacher knows the answer, and here we have a set of tasks. Remember we said either, let's say letters, write uppercase or lowercase. Maybe we're working on vocabulary. I show the word in English, the student has to translate into mother tongue. Or maybe I want irregular verbs. I show the student the verb in the present tense, and the student has to say the verb in the past tense, or vice versa. Whatever it is you're working on, before the student plays his turn, then he must do a task. Okay, here are some options for playing one-on-one. Let's start with option 1. Only the student throws the die. And then, let's say, again, number 3, the student is asked to complete the corresponding number of tasks. So if we have 3, and let's say we're working on irregular verbs, so I said to the student, okay, I have 8 wrote and sent. If the student got all 3 of them right, the student moves his marker 3 bases. But let's say he got only 1 of them right, or 2 of them right. So the teacher's marker moves according to the number of incorrect responses. The teacher only gets to move when the student gets confused and makes a mistake. And what the kids like is that the more they practice, and this is a short game, if you don't take too many irregular verbs, you can go round and round, and the irregular verbs will repeat themselves. And the student will remember from time to time, and then the teacher will say, oh no, I don't get to play, you're so good, look, my marker isn't moving anymore. So in the beginning, the teacher may be able to move her marker, and then as the student gets better, the teacher moves her marker less. Now, every time the student gets confused, the teacher will also show the student what the right answer was, and show the student that the question is going to appear again soon. I usually have the trigger, the target, the question, if it's the letter, the verbs, the vocabulary items on flashcards. So I show the student it's a pack of the cards. I put the word he got confused with back in the pile, and it's going to come up again in a few minutes. So the student says, okay, what was that? Show me that. And then it comes up again, and the teacher said, oh, last time I got to move when you got this word, and now I can't move. I'm stuck, and look at you progressing. Look how you keep passing home base, and I hardly get there. So this is one way you can play the game. Let's look at another option. Same game, different option. The student and the teacher get to throw the die. So we have, remember, when you throw the die, you can get a 1, you can get a 2, you can get a 3, or a 4. The student, on her turn, she throws, let's say again, 3. She has 3 tasks, and she progresses as many as she got right. The teacher doesn't have a task to complete. She knows the irregular verb. But when she throws the die on her turn, she can only move 1 base less. So the student is competing with the teacher for going around the board, but the teacher has like a handicap, a disadvantage. But it's a word from golf, not from special education. That in a disadvantage that she can only move less, and the student has a better chance of getting around the board and getting more points. And again, in the same way, as we said before. So the student feels the teacher and I are playing one against the other. The teacher might win, the teacher might lose, but the student has more opportunities to win. But it's not giving the student the game away. Kids aren't foolish. They know if the teacher is just pretending to let them win. Now, there's another option, same game. And this is one of the rules I learned in my very first month of teaching. I started out as an elementary school teacher, and then after 4 years moved to high school, and I've been doing that for 28 years. And I still use this principle. On the games I play with the students with special education, special needs, the student always progresses. Always. The student gets 2 turns. The teacher only has 1 turn. If the student gets confused and makes a mistake, they have to listen to the correction and they progress, but only on 1 turn. The mistake cost them 1 turn, but it didn't cost them their turn in playing the game. Some of these kids are very sensitive, and the idea of missing a turn, if they threw only 2 or only 1 on the die and they got the word wrong, if we used the previous rules, they might have not moved at all, not played. And some students can take that quite badly. You have to know your student. So this way, the student can always play. Originally, you have 2 turns, and if you get confused and you forget, you forfeit 1 turn. And the teacher never gets 2 turns. The teacher only gets 1 turn. So some kids you will say, okay, they don't need that, but I find that most of the kids really, really like that, and they're so proud when they did get it right, and instead of progressing once around the base, especially if they got 4, they go twice around, a double home run, and you can tell them they must make baseball history, because I don't know if you can do that in baseball, and they're really pleased with themselves, and they don't like missing out. So this is a really helpful tip to remember that I use literally every day in the class, even though already it's high school. And I've taught adults as well for many years, and they weren't defined special ed, but they came to my class because they were the lowest class group in college. They like that too. Now, option 4, same game. We're still talking about the same game, but again, you take these principles for almost any game that you know and can think of. You set the time. If you're teaching a student privately, one-on-one, I'm talking about school, not private lessons in the afternoon, but this will work as well. But first of all, in school, you're going to meet the student every week. So the student competes against himself or herself. You say, okay, we're going to play the baseball again only for 5 minutes. And then the student says, oh, I managed to get 3 home runs, go around the board 3 times. And this time I managed 4 times, and this time I managed 5 times, because every time I get better. And I do it quickly, and I remember all the regular verbs, or I remember how to translate all the words we're practicing. And you keep a little notebook, or on the student's phone, or somewhere you think that it's safe, the record of how many rounds the student did each time. And the student sees it's getting better, and he's competing against himself. Some kids don't like that. Some kids love that. It's perfect for them. They need to compete against themselves. It's just how they feel safe and successful, and they see their progress. One of the big principles about working with children with special needs of any kind is that there's no one recipe for them all. You need to have in your toolbox principles and tools and options and see with the kid that you're working with, the child, I shouldn't say kid perhaps, the child you're working with, what works with this child. And some children really like this, while some children prefer to play against the teacher. So you should know these are four different options, four different ways to work with the very same game. Any questions about the baseball before we move on? I'm keeping an eye on the chat box. And so write me if you have any questions about how to play it or anything about that. Okay, now these principles will work with any board game in particular, though they'll work with any game, but why am I stressing board games? As teachers, as much as we work hard and spend hours of our own time and unpaid time instead of doing things with our friends and our family, we can't produce beautiful boards like store-bought boards. But with this principle, you can take every lesson, you can bring in a different board game. I had all my extended family know that they all have to lend me their board games, or if the children grow older, give me their old games, so that every lesson I can bring in different games, but we play in the exact same way with the exact same rules. But the games are attractive. They're different once they have this drawing on them, once they have space theme, once they have dinosaur theme, once they have whatever. So this just makes it more interesting. So you can use any commercial game. Now, what also adds some spice to the lesson, I wonder if you all know about interesting dice. I don't have all of these. I use the one on the bottom there, right, the purple one that includes a 0 and a 9. But there are just pretty ones with a dice inside of a dice. So if you want two dice, then you have one inside the other. And you have ones that really go with numbers up to 20 and up to 50. These kind of fun dice can be bought at stores that sell things for the people who play Dungeons and Dragons. They have all kinds of interesting dice now. The students really get excited to see these things. It gives the game extra panache when you suddenly have a 0 or a 9. They're not used to such numbers, so that won't work with baseball, because baseball you can only do up to 4, but it will certainly work with other games, especially the older students, like in high school. They really appreciate this extra touch of fun dice. Now, let's stop a minute and let's think. I like the way this cat is kind of concentrated, so I use it as my stop and think picture. I'm all for games. I want games. I want you to use games, but you have to think. You're teachers. You have a responsibility to teach. You want to teach material. You want the student to internalize material. You have material to cover. Not every game is a game worth using or worth doing, because it depends, or it should be used sparingly, because you really have to think when you choose a game how much time of the game is actually spent learning and how much time isn't really. The game we discussed till now, baseball, the child is learning all the time. Every time the child throws the die, he or she has to answer a question or do a task or write something or respond to something or translate. They're learning, they're reviewing all the time. But not all games do that, and you have to be aware and think, do you want to use this game or not? For instance, Hangman. Do you all know the game Hangman? Please write in the chat box. Maybe in some countries it's called something else. Everyone knows Hangman, right? I couldn't really draw it here on the PowerPoint. But that's the old traditional game. We see this as teachers. It's always in teacher courses and lectures and everything. Oh, you want to practice vocabulary with the kids? Well, play Hangman. Even online, there's lots of online apps and games. Go play Hangman, and then your students will learn vocabulary. But you have to be careful with Hangman. If your goal is actually practicing the names of the letters, Hangman is great. I mean, you have to guess the word, so you tell me is it an A, is it a C, is it a T? You're practicing the names of the letter. Or as one teacher pointed out to me, it's a great diagnostic tool if you have a new class and you want to assess if they know the names of the letters or they don't, and you can quickly see what's happening in your class. Or if you have a new student in one-on-one, you play Hangman and you see, okay, I'm not sure what my new student knows or doesn't know, and let's see if he knows the names of the letters. It can also be useful if you were working on vocabulary items during the lesson and the last 10 minutes of the lesson or 7 minutes or whatever, you want to review. Let's see how much you remember vocabulary items we just learned, not random words, words that we just learned and we're working on, and now that as you see the letters get filled in the spaces, do you remember them? That is efficient. You're utilizing time for learning. But, big but, the game, I remember seeing it for years as a teacher trainer. I used to see this and I didn't even think of this. And if your goal is acquiring new vocabulary, Hangman is not the way to go. Because what are the students focusing on? They guess all kinds of random letters until they discover the unknown word. But if you tell the student what it means, you're telling the student, okay, this word that you discovered means what it is. And then the student's, okay, give me another one, because he really enjoys throwing out letters. That's no way to learn a new vocabulary item. He's wasting a lot of time on guessing letters and thinking about the letters and maybe having a lot of fun, but that's not a way to learn vocabulary in context in a meaningful way or in a way that will help the student remember it. We don't always need to teach vocabulary in context, but we need to teach vocabulary to connect to something that will help the student remember it or work on it by repeating it like in the baseball game. And seeing it for a second after the student was so focused on guessing letters and he said, I did it on time, give me another word. And they just don't internalize it. So you're wasting a lot of time. So when you're playing games with the kids, and I want you to play games with the students, think about what your goal is. If your goal isn't practicing letters, then you don't want to choose a game like Hangman. So every game that you choose, just think before you start, before you bring it to the student, how much of the time we're playing will the child be focused on searching for letters like the word search? A lot of time gets wasted on just searching and not necessarily working on the vocabulary. Think about what you're trying to achieve with the game. Okay, that's my thinking cap. Remember, lots of games, same principle. Tic-tac-toe works wonderfully just like the baseball. Except without the die before it's your turn, and you have to do a task, and then you can put in your X or your circle, and then you decide. It changes the whole aspect of the game when a child has 2 turns and only forfeits 1 turn if he gets it wrong. It can be very funny. If you play soccer or football, whatever you call it, that works exactly like the baseball. And instead of going around the diamond, you draw lines with the ball and you put some sort of something to signify the ball in the middle. And when the student gets it right, the ball progresses toward his goal. And when the student gets it wrong, the ball progresses toward the teacher's goal. So it works the same way. I've just found that my students are more interested in baseball because it's foreign. Card games, there's lots of card games you can play. Spreading out the cards, how many cards can you remember, and which cards. There's lots of things you can play as long as you remember the principles that we looked at in the first four examples. Now, you don't always have to play a game that's a competition. You can play collaboration games that you and the teacher, that you and the student and the teacher are more equal partners to win against the game. This I learned from a speaker called Karen White. Every student folds up a paper and creates squares. As you can see here, we have 8 squares and draws random things, whatever they can draw. As you can see, I purposely didn't put nice pictures so it looked like something we were drawing. And we cut it up into strips and put it face down on the table. And then we say 1, 2, 3. And let's say the student picks up the moon, and I happen to pick up, what shall I pick up? A person. Okay, I'll pick up the person. Together, the student and the teacher have to think, what does the moon have to do with the person? And we can create a funny sentence or something like that, and to connect them. And in that way, the student is reviewing the vocabulary. So if we manage to make a connection, let's say house and person, okay, maybe the person lives in the house. House and sun, and maybe it's very hot, so everyone went into the house because it's too hot to play outside. When you make the connection, we won. If we couldn't find a connection between the flower and the moon, then we lost that round. Together we have to find the connection. So it helps the student be a little creative and open, and it uses vocabulary. It uses speaking in English. So before you ask questions, and I'd like to hear how you use some of the games, remember, if you use games wisely, they can be in your service and do a lot. Lots of those things with R. And I'm really glad that, thank you for giving me your attention. And you can find me and the things I do all available on my blog, as you see the address here. And if anyone would like to ask questions, I'm here for questions.
For posting on Google the link of Naomi's webinar, Naomi's blog. Uh, I haven't noticed any questions in the chat, but maybe I can just ask Naomi what does she think about digital tools, because we have been discussing in the chat which of the digital tools we like to use for playing games and which work best for their students, because those that you have showed us are some classical ones, and actually what I have noticed with some of my colleagues, they prefer combining, and I'm also for it, because I noticed that sometimes kids are sick and tired with like online and digital tools, and sometimes the cardboard game, because I've noticed when I play with my own sons and I get the idea, okay, this game is quite good, I will try to implement it into my classroom. And it actually works. I use something that we teach in the class. So what do you think about combining, or have you been using any digital tools for playing games?
I use a lot of digital tools, but when I'm working one-on-one, I use the digital tools for teaching. I use, like I saw in the chat box, people mentioned Quizlet. I use Quizlet a lot. In my special education classes, all the students have a Quizlet account. I put up vocabulary items that they need for the material we're learning. And they're supposed to play with the words. And I have a teacher's account on Quizlet so I can see their homework if they actually play with the words. But that's not something they need me to do anything. They don't need me to be there. They need me to prepare it, but they don't need me to be there. When I'm sitting one-on-one, I use Edpuzzle a lot. For instance, if you see on my blog on recent posts, you can see I have a romance and Rome activity where I stop the videos and have students answer questions or do a task I have for all kinds of levels. But that's not exactly a game. I use a lot of digital tools when I sit with the students and then we work together if it's an online worksheet or with Edpuzzle. I love using videos because my students don't hear well, they're deaf and hard of hearing, and they need a lot of visual material. So on my blog you will find a whole category of exercises with videos, and then Edpuzzle allows me to stop the video at certain points and ask questions. And then we sit together and we do that together and we look at the questions and how to answer them and what is needed and how to construct a sentence. But that doesn't fall under the category of a game, because the games online, the students usually play alone. I saw people mention Kahoot. Kahoot, again, is a lot of fun. You have to, but it's not so suitable when you're sitting one-on-one. If you have 40 minutes a week with a student, and it's usually never 40 minutes, till the student comes and the bell rings and till the student gets settled down. That's not the thing to do with a teacher. That's the thing to do with a group, or even to teach the family to help the student play at home. So it might be good to do once with a child to teach the child how to use the game or to prepare. But when you have a lesson one-on-one, you need to utilize the time and maximize the learning. And playing Kahoot on the time when the student is alone with a teacher, it's kind of a waste of time, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for elaborating that and explaining. What I the baseball game. I really like the idea in how many ways you have actually have changed it, and I think I'm going to try it out definitely in the classroom, because you have mentioned that you can play it one on one, and I was just thinking, what if I give them one on one when students are playing one on one? I don't know if anybody, if I as a teacher, and I will suggest this for my colleagues who are teaching one-on-one, many of our students, those who are struggling with learning and they stay after school, I will definitely suggest, I don't know, this idea, and I will even try it out with my own sons. I think this will be perfect. Thank you for mentioning that. Any other questions?
I'll be glad to hear whatever you try out. And we all experiment. We learn by doing.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Naomi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and good night, everyone.
Before you leave, everybody, and before I stop the recording, remember that if you would like to get a certificate of attendance, I'm going to share a link in the blog, in the chat now. Okay, so you can fill in the Google form, and we have also mentioned, because this idea that Naomi suggested in playing games with students one-on-one, and many interesting games that, like Hangman, I never got the idea that I could, I don't know, teach a new word playing Hangman and then explain the vocabulary. And I find really some interesting ideas that I will definitely try and implement into my in my classroom. So you can fill in the Google form. And Naomi, thank you one more time for coming and for giving us so many ideas that I'm now going to use to motivate my colleagues to start sharing and saying what is the best that works for them in their classroom, and if they are going to use any of your ideas. And I think that's it. Thank you for coming, and I hope to hear with you soon. So I'm going to give you the mic before I close the recording.
Thank you for having me, and keep up the good work, everybody. Good night.
Super. Thank you all, and it was a pleasure having you. Bye, everybody. I'm just going to say a huge wave to all of you. My camera is just about to start. Yay! Yay! Let's do a quick screenshot of us. Where is it? Just a moment. Yay! Now we are a bit bigger. Okay, a big smile. Super. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll see you all in the eTwinning Inclusive Education group. Keep sharing, keep smiling, and keep playing